The roar of the moving truck bounced between the tall pines as I stepped onto gravel driveway of the old ranch that had been in my family for 3 generations. Cold morning fog curled around the wooden fence posts, dissolving slowly as sunlight pushed through the trees. For the first time in years, the air felt clean, real, and alive, nothing like the polluted, boxed-in suffocation of Portland where I'd spent the last 15 years. My name is Ethan Walker, 44 years old, divorced, father of 2, and the accidental inheritor of the one place I never expected to return to, the Walker Ranch. 47 acres of dense forest, creek water cold enough to snap a man's spirit back into place, and a century-old barn built by my great-grandfather with nothing but stubbornness and a borrowed steamroller. Uncle Ray always said our family produced 2 kinds of people, those who stayed and those who left. I had left, and now I was back. I lifted another box from the truck bed and couldn't help smiling when I read the marker on top. Tyler and Maddie, bunk bed parts. My kids. The 2 reasons I've been desperate for a place where their weekend with me could actually feel like a home instead of an apartment squeezed between 2 brick walls. The cold air stung pleasantly against my cheeks as I breathed in deep. The ranch smelled like damp pine needles, dusted soil, and a hint of the metal from old tools in the barn. After years of city noise, the quiet felt almost sacred. And then the silence cracked, not from nature, but from heels. Sharp, measured heel clicks cutting through gravel like a metronome of doom. I turned and saw her. Walking toward me from the direction of the Willowbrook Estates road was a woman, in a pale beige suit so stiff it looked ironed directly onto her bones. Her hair was slicked back into a bun, so tight it could snap wire. She walked like she owned the ground, the trees, the sky. Hell, maybe even oxygen. Her name, though I didn't know it yet, was Cordelia Hanover. And today was the day she decided I was her enemy. "Excuse me," she called, waving a clipboard thick enough to double as a medieval weapon. "Sir, you can't unload that truck until I approve it." I blinked. "Sorry." She smiled, a smile so fake it practically squeaked. "This is a regulated community," she said, approaching the driveway like she was afraid dirt might leap up and contaminate her shoes. "You must clear all moving activity with the Homeowners Association at least 72 hours in advance." I set the box down slowly. "Ma'am, my property isn't part of your HOA." Her eyes twitched, just a little, just enough to show the first crack in the porcelain. "This road," she said, tapping her clipboard, "is a shared community access lane. Therefore, all traffic is subject to Willowbrook standards." I looked at the barely paved old road my great-grandfather had carved out of land with a steamroller he'd rented for $5 and a bottle of whiskey. "This road existed before your community was even built," I said. Cordelia did not blink. "Nevertheless," she said, "you need approval. That vehicle is a commercial truck and violates Section 4.2 of our neighborhood aesthetic guidelines." She held out a 47-page HOA rulebook with color-coded tabs. Color-coded tabs. My uncle would have launched that book into orbit, using his homemade trebuchet. "Ma'am," I repeated, "I'm not under your HOA." Her smile evaporated. "Good. Fake things should disappear in real places." "We'll see about that," she snapped. "We'll see about all of this." She whipped out her phone, photographing my license plate, the moving truck, even my boots, as if she planned to cite me for improper footwear. Then she walked away, measuring the truck's width with a tape measure she'd literally pulled from her purse. I exhaled slowly. Welcome home, Ethan. This was going to be something. The next week revealed exactly what something meant. Monday at 6:55 a.m., just as I poured my first cup of coffee, a city inspector knocked at my door. He wore a neon vest, a tired beard, and the defeated expression of a man who had seen every form of nonsense imaginable. "Morning," he grunted. "Noise complaint." I glanced around. The ranch was silent except for birds. "What noise?" He shrugged, flipping open his clipboard. Anonymous caller described, let's see, he squinted, excessive mechanical screeching, heavy equipment grinding, hazardous debris piles, and potential unlicensed construction. I stared at him, then pointed at the empty yard. "Yep," he said, rubbing his forehead. "That's what I thought." He left 5 minutes later, promising to write complaint unfounded for the 3rd time that morning. 3 hours after that, the electric company arrived, then water services, then gas, all claiming someone had reported irregular usage patterns. My property didn't even have gas connected yet. By Wednesday, the UPS driver pulled me aside. "Man," He said quietly, eyes darting toward Willowbrook Estates. "You're the new guy they're targeting, huh?" "Targeting?" "Yeah," he whispered. "Ask anyone. They've had run-ins with her, especially folks who don't fit the community aesthetic." He didn't have to explain. His tone said enough. That night, I started digging. County records, old property maps, easement files buried in dusty drawers no one had touched in decades. And that's when I found it. My great-grandfather, Henry Walker, had handwritten his will in perfect cursive. Among the property rights listed was one line I almost missed. The access lane, now known as Meadowline Road, shall remain private under Walker family authority. Meaning, Willowbrook Estates wasn't sharing their road with me. They'd been using my road for 5 years without permission, and Cordelia Hanover was trying to regulate land she legally had no authority over. A slow, satisfied grin spread across my face. Uncle Ray would have been proud. 2 days later brought the turning point. I was installing new lights in the barn when a sheriff's SUV rolled up the driveway. But unlike the other official vehicles that week, this one gave me a good feeling instantly. The door opened, and out stepped Deputy Karen Holt. Tall, calm, sharp eyes, the kind of law enforcement presence that made you breathe easier, not tense up. She wore her uniform with quiet authority, not swagger, not intimidation. "Mr. Walker?" she asked, approaching with confident strides. "That's me," I said. "Deputy Holt, Millfield County Sheriff's Office." Her tone was steady, professional, but I could detect an undertone, like she already knew what was going on. "Can I help you, Deputy?" She nodded toward Willowbrook Estates. "We received a series of complaints from a Mrs. Cordelia Hanover regarding, well, everything." She flipped open her notepad. "Noise, unauthorized construction, road obstruction, environmental disruption," and she paused, raising a brow. "Unregistered livestock?" I snorted. "I don't even have livestock." That was my assumption. She closed the pad. "Mr. Walker, between you and me, we've been getting calls from her for years. 99% unfounded. But she's persistent." I hesitated. "Is there anything I can do?" Her voice softened, not unprofessionally, just humanly. "Document everything," she said. "Every incident, every complaint, every interaction. People like her rely on scaring folks into compliance." "People like her?" I echoed. Deputy Holt nodded. "Controlling. Smart enough to manipulate systems. Not smart enough to stop before they cross legal lines." I liked her honesty. Refreshing. Rare. She gave me her card. "Call me directly if anything escalates," she said. "I mean that." As she walked back to her SUV, she paused. "Oh, and welcome back to Millfield County." That single sentence felt like an anchor dropping into place. For the first time since moving, I didn't feel alone. Cordelia did not appreciate that I wasn't collapsing under her pressure. Her retaliation intensified. Every morning at exactly 6 o'clock, she parked her Lexus sideways across the access road, my access road, pretending to stretch while blocking my exit for 20 minutes. One morning, she dramatically inhaled like she was about to faint. "Mr. Walker, your truck emits fumes that violate health guidelines." I had not even started the engine. She left notes on my windshield written in looping cursive. "Community harmony requires compliance. Your non-standard barn violates visual cohesion. We expect neighbors to uphold neighborhood values." One day her note simply said, "You don't belong here." And something inside me hardened. Not fear, not anger, just resolve. At Martinez Hardware, while buying heavy-duty locks on my barn, a man with a trimmed beard and calloused hands stopped me. "You Walker's boy?" he asked. "Ethan." "Yeah." He extended a hand. "Name's Javier. I heard the Dragon Lady's been circling your place." "Dragon Lady?" He chuckled. "Cordelia. President, queen, dictator. Whatever title she's given herself this season." Over bitter diner coffee that tasted like punishment, Javier told me stories. She had forced a single mother to repaint her house 7 times, filed weekly complaints against a black veteran service dog-harassed an elderly couple until they move outside of a Hispanic contractor for non-conforming vehicle aesthetics because his truck was older. She targets people she thinks she can push around. Javier said, "Push long enough, they break." And then she buys their property cheap, using her developer buddies. My stomach twisted. "Developers?" Javier nodded. "Word is she's tied up with a company planning to build luxury condos. Land like yours." He leaned forward. Prime target. So it wasn't personal. It was profitable. Until this moment, everything had been harassment, annoying, infuriating, unlawful, but still just harassment. Then came the night that would change everything. It was 1:42 a.m. My motion sensors pinged. I checked the live camera feed and froze. Cordelia Hanover stood at my gate, wearing black clothing, gloves, and carrying a canister. 2 men, unknown, stood beside her. They weren't vandalizing. They were pouring something into my wellhead, my family's drinking water. Chemical labels gleamed under the camera's night vision. Industrial herbicide. My throat tightened. My vision tunneled. That wasn't harassment. That was environmental terrorism and attempted poisoning. I didn't call Deputy Martinez. I didn't call the city. I called Deputy Karen Holt. She picked up on the second ring, voice instantly awake. Walker? Karen. I breathed. I've got something you need to see. Right now. Within minutes, her SUV tore down the access lane. Lights off. Silent. Professional. Karen watched the footage with stillness that scared me more than if she'd shouted. When the video ended, she exhaled once. Slow, sharp. Ethan, this isn't HOA overreach anymore, she said. This is felony contamination. This is jail time serious. You believe me? She turned her head, eyes locking onto mine with unwavering conviction. I believe what I just saw, she said, and I'm not letting her bury you. Something in my chest unclenched. Karen stepped closer to the screen, taking photos, recording timestamps. This is going to state investigators, she said. Tonight. But then she paused again, a shadow crossing her face. Something tells me, she murmured, that Cordelia didn't do this alone. People like her never work alone. She was right. The sun had barely risen when I stepped out of the house, my boots crunching on frost-kissed grass. My entire body felt like I'd swallowed electricity. Every muscle still hummed with the adrenaline of the night before, watching Cordelia Hanover and her masked accomplices poison my well like a coordinated strike team. I barely slept an hour. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that herbicide container tilting in slow motion, the way she glanced around with military precision, the way the 2 men followed her orders like a chain of command. Harassment was one thing. This was targeted, calculated destruction, cold and tactical. Deputy Karen Holt had driven away at 4 a.m., her voice calm but her hands tight around the steering wheel as she said, Ethan, whatever this is, it's bigger than HOA politics. Now, standing in the icy morning, I heard another engine approaching, a familiar one. Karen's sheriff SUV rolled into the driveway again, this time not alone. Behind her were 2 government-issued vehicles, a dark blue state environmental unit truck and an unmarked sedan with government plates. My stomach dropped. She stepped out, expression sharp, focused, all business. The morning light glinted off her badge, giving her the aura of someone carrying authority, like armor. Ethan, she called, we're moving fast on this. Clearly, I said, eyeing the officials behind her. Karen gestured toward them. This is Senior Investigator Leah Mercer from the State Environmental Crimes Division and Special Analyst Jonah Brooks. They watched the footage I sent. They're here to test the well. Leah Mercer shook my hand firmly. Her grip felt colder than the air, like she'd held too many poison samples in her life. We saw your camera files, she said. Mr. Walker, if the substance matches what's on film, this is a felony-level contamination, potential federal case. Jonah Brooks stepped forward with equipment, his voice quiet but grim. Your well feeds part of the watershed. If they contaminated it deeper than the surface, it could have affected the entire water system downstream. My jaw clenched. So, Cordelia didn't just try to poison me. She tried to poison the environment. Karen spoke up softly. She didn't think about environment. She thought about eliminating you. And that hit harder than the cold. Leah and Jonah set to work at the wellhead, collecting samples, scraping residue, photographing everything in a grid. Karen moved closer to me. You holding up? She asked. I don't know. I admitted. Feels like my brain's doing somersaults. Her eyes softened. I've dealt with people like her before. They escalate until something snaps. And when people like that break, they take others down with them. I swallowed hard. You think she'll try again? Karen looked me dead in the eyes. I think she hasn't even started. Before I could respond, a battered red pickup rolled into the driveway. Javier hopped out, carrying a toolbox and wearing an expression that meant trouble. Brother, he said, your security footage is all over local contractor group chats already. I blinked. What? How? He shrugged. Someone leaked it. And guess what? One of the guys recognized one of the masked men. My heart rate spiked. Karen stepped forward immediately. Who? A local tree service worker named Brent Carlson, the same guy who cut your oak tree last week. Karen's face hardened. That ties the sabotage incidents together. Javier nodded. And Brent doesn't work alone. He runs side jobs with a man named Chase Yarrow, who just so happens to work for Linden Development Group. Karen's head snapped toward him. The developer tied to Willowbrook HOA? The same. I felt my breath leave my body. Cordelia wasn't harassing me on her own ego trip. She was working with developers. Karen murmured, "This just turned into a conspiracy case." Leah approached holding her tablet. Face pale. "Mr. Walker, the chemical poured into your well is a restricted agricultural herbicide, extremely toxic, illegal for civilian use." Jonah added, "The amount they poured could cause neurological damage if ingested for weeks." A chill crawled up my spine. Karen stepped closer to them. "Do you have enough for charges?" Leah nodded gravely. "More than enough. But before we move, you should see this." She handed Karen her tablet. On it were satellite images of my ranch taken from the past month. Karen's brows furrowed. "Who took these?" Leah tapped the screen. "These aren't civilian resolution. Someone with access to commercial-grade survey data did this. It's the kind developers use before land acquisition." I leaned forward, pulse hammering. My entire ranch was mapped. Soil type, elevation, water flow, timber density. Each area marked with digital codes. Jonah whispered, This is a development blueprint before land seizure." Karen's jaw tightened. They plan to take Ethan's ranch. Leah exhaled. "More than that. They've been evaluating where to build roads, where to build condos. Your barn? Labeled for demolition." For a whole 5 seconds, everything inside me froze. They were preparing to erase my family's legacy. And Cordelia was the executioner. As Leah and Jonah finished, Karen turned toward me. "Ethan, there's more." She pulled an envelope from her vest. A plain one. My name written in shaky handwriting. "This arrived at the sheriff's office addressed to you." I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a rushed, shaky message. "They want your land. Cordelia is working with Linden Group. She's being paid to drive you out. Watch your kids. Watch your house. They're planning something bigger. A friend." My hands trembled. Karen took the letter gently, her face darkening. "This is evidence," she said. "And a warning." Javier cursed under his breath. "Brother, you're in the crosshairs." Karen placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "And that's why I'm not leaving you alone in this." Her voice had steel in it. Jonah suddenly called out from the well area. Deputy Holt, you need to see this." We rushed over. He pointed to a small fragment stuck under a rock at the well's edge. Karen crouched. "What is that?" Jonah lifted it carefully with tweezers. A tiny torn piece of laminated plastic. When he flipped it over, my blood ran cold. It was part of a security badge. Not from the HOA. Not from a contractor. But from... Karen whispered the words aloud, almost in disbelief. "Millfield City Council operations." The contamination wasn't only Cordelia and 2 hired thugs. Someone in city government was here that night, meaning the conspiracy reached much, much deeper. The officials left just after noon, but the weight they left behind felt heavier than the mountains. The ranch felt different now. Not peaceful, but exposed. Vulnerable. Like something precious was under siege, and every shadow hid an accomplice. Karen stayed behind. She didn't even ask. She just stayed, leaning against a patrol SUV with thermos, eyes scanning the tree like she expected another attack. "Ethan," she finally said, "I want to walk your perimeter." We grabbed jackets and began circling the property. The winter wind cut like tiny blades, but Karen walked with silent intensity, scanning footprints, tire tracks, broken branches. She moved like someone who'd been trained to see stories in dirt and shadows. "Deputy," I said at last, "you're taking this awfully personally." She paused, looking toward the forest. "That's because it is personal," she murmured. "I've filed complaints about Willowbrook's harassment patterns for 2 years. No one listened. You've been watching them?" She nodded. "When I was a new deputy," she said softly, "a young mother from Willowbrook called me crying. They had run her out, panic attacks, constant complaints, threats. I tried to help, but her report disappeared." "Disappeared?" Karen's jaw clenched. City council buried it, said I was overreaching my jurisdiction. And the officer who filed the original report reassigned. A chill crawled through me. So this has been going on for years. Longer, she said. Cordelia's just a face. Someone higher pulls the strings. We reached the far north edge of my property, with a creek cut through mossy rocks. Karen crouched and touched the ground. Fresh footprints. Same boots as last night. My pulse kicked into high speed. They came back. She nodded grimly. And recently, Karen traced the footprints to a small clearing. There, tucked behind a rotting stump, half buried under leaves, was a tiny black security camera pointed toward my house. A camera I had installed. Karen carefully picked it up with a glove. This is military-grade surveillance, she said, not consumer tech. My stomach twisted. Hired criminals don't use stuff like this, she continued. This is government-issued. The implication slammed into me like a truck. Karen, who the hell am I fighting? She met my eyes, voice low. People who think they're untouchable. As we headed back toward the ranch house, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Karen immediately placed a hand on my wrist. Put it on speaker, she said quietly. I answered. Hello, a distorted voice replied. Mr. Walker, stop digging. Stop resisting. Sell the ranch, or you will lose much more than land. Karen's eyes widened, but she signaled for silence. I clenched the phone. Who is this? A long pause. Then the voice said, Ask Deputy Holt. She already knows. The line went dead. Karen froze. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked shaken. Karen? I asked softly. She swallowed hard, slowly lowering her hand from the radio clipped to her vest. There's something you need to know, she said. Something I didn't think would ever connect to this. My chest tightened. She looked almost guilty. What is it? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Before Willowbrook started targeting residents, the Millfield City Council tried to seize land for a failed development project. And she closed her eyes briefly. The sheriff's office investigated possible corruption. A pause. Then one night, the entire case file vanished, completely wiped from the system. My heart pounded. That can't be coincidence. It isn't. Her voice cracked slightly, because one of the names on that missing file was Cordelia Hanover. And the others? She looked straight at me, eyes dark. One of them was a sitting city council member. A beat. And the other was chief of city planning. Another beat. And there was a note attached to the case. She hesitated. What note? She finally spoke. Acquire Walker Ranch at all costs. For several seconds, the world stopped breathing. She continued, voice trembling with anger. Ethan, they've targeted your land for years. Long before you moved back, they used Willowbrook HOA to remove anyone standing in their way. And now that you inherited it, she exhaled shakily. They've escalated. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed again, this time a text from my ex-wife. Dropping Tyler and Maddie early for weekend. Be there in 15. My blood iced over. Karen saw my expression and instantly understood. Oh, God, she whispered. Your kids. We sprinted back to the house. Because if Cordelia was willing to poison my well, if someone from the city council was willing to use government badges to break into my land, if they had already installed hidden cameras, then Tyler and Maddie weren't just collateral. They were leverage. We reached the driveway just as a minivan approached. My kids. I ran toward them, but Karen's instincts were faster. She grabbed my arm sharply. Ethan, stop. I froze, because parked further down the access lane, half hidden behind a juniper bush, was a silver sedan. Engine running, windows tinted, positioned watching the driveway, watching my kids. Karen's entire stance changed, predatory, protective, trained. She reached for her holster. Get your children inside the house, she ordered, voice low, fierce. Now. What about the car? I whispered. She narrowed her eyes. I'm about to introduce myself. And she walked straight toward the shadowed sedan with the steady, fearless steps of a woman who refused to be intimidated by anyone. Not city officials, not corrupt developers, not criminals. The sedan revved softly, shifted, and began to back away. Karen broke into a sprint. Sheriff's office. Stop. But the car peeled away, tires spitting gravel, disappearing around the bend into Willowbrook Estates. Karen skidded to a halt, fury burning behind her eyes. "This is no longer harassment," she said breathlessly. "This is surveillance and intimidation involving children." My heart thudded violently against my ribs. What do we do now? Karen turned to me slowly. "Ethan, we build a case. Not just against Cordelia. Against everyone involved. City council. Developers. Whoever installed that camera. Whoever made that call." She stepped closer, her voice steel. "And we don't stop until the whole network collapses." I swallowed hard. "And if they come for my kids again?" Karen's expression darkened into something lethal. "They won't," she said. "Not while I'm here." Morning sunlight filtered weakly through the forest canopy, but the air around the ranch felt colder, heavier, as if the trees themselves had learned the truth from last night's investigation. They stood silent and tense, like witnesses who knew the storm was not over. Karen Holt hadn't left. She sat at my kitchen table with a notepad open, her badge tilted on the wood, the cold steam from her untouched coffee rising between us. She'd spent half the night filing urgent incident reports, logging the satellite evidence, the camera discovery, the threatening call, and the sedan that watched my children. Her presence should have eased me. It didn't. It only confirmed how bad this truly was. My kids, Tyler and Maddie, were upstairs asleep, safe, warm, unaware that the world outside had turned into a battlefield. Karen leaned back, stretching her neck. "You slept at all?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "You." Her faint smirk said everything. "Sleep's a luxury," she murmured. "We're past that point." A knock at the front door made us both stiffen instantly. Karen's hand flew to her holster. I held my breath. She approached slowly, silent, then peered through the window. "It's Javier," she said, exhaling. When she opened the door, Javier rushed inside, slamming it behind him. They came to my place. He wasn't smiling like usual. His face was pale, hard, furious. "What do you mean they came?" Karen demanded. Javier rubbed his forehead, pacing. "I went to open my shop at dawn. Garage door was slashed. Office ransacked. They didn't steal anything. They just left a message." He pulled a photo from his pocket and set it on the table. In the picture, spray painted across his garage wall, were 3 words: "Back him and fall." Karen sucked in a breath. It was the same red paint used on my barn. I felt ice settle in my chest. "They're targeting anyone who helps me," I whispered. Javier nodded. "Not just me. My cousin Maria, you remember, the one in city planning? She texted me at 5 a.m. She found a letter taped to her door. Another photo followed. White paper. Bold black letters. "Stay silent or be reassigned." Karen seized the photo, fire flashing in her eyes. "This is intimidation of a government employee. These people are spiraling." Javier leaned forward, lowering his voice. "And that's not all. I did some digging while the sun was still down. I traced that silver sedan. Only one model in Millfield has those tinted aftermarket side panels." Karen froze. "Whose is it?" Javier swallowed. "City Councilman Craig Dalton." A name Karen clearly recognized. She muttered a curse under her breath. That man slipped through every corruption investigation for a decade. If he's involved, the contamination wasn't just Cordelia. Javier nodded. "He's part of Linden Development Group, at least behind the scenes." I felt my stomach drop. City Council, developers, the HOA, all tied together, forming a noose around my family land. Karen paced, thinking at tactical speed. "Javier, you need protection too. I'll request a deputy patrol near your place." Javier shook his head. "No offense, deputy, but patrol cars don't scare these people. Evidence does." He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a USB drive. Karen narrowed her eyes. "What's on that?" "I hacked into some public planning servers. Nothing illegal, just access archive data. And guess what I found?" He pushed the drive across the table toward us. A preliminary development layout dated 3 months before Ethan inherited the ranch. My pulse hammered. They planned this long before I arrived, meaning they expected me to fail, to break, to leave. Karen plugged the USB into my laptop. A map appeared. My ranch, divided into construction zones. Phase 1, riverfront luxury homes. Phase 2, senior complex. Phase 3, commercial shops. Phase 4, recreational center. The barn was labeled Demolition Q4. Karen whispered, "Dear God." Javier crossed his arms. They weren't hoping to get Ethan out. They were counting on it. I stared at the screen, unable to move, unable to blink. My family's land wasn't land to them. It was profit, blueprints, dollar signs, condos on a spreadsheet. Karen's voice snapped me back. We need to figure out the hierarchy. Who's giving orders? Javier spoke softly. That's the thing. The planning files keep mentioning a code name. He showed us a note. Directive approved by Project Harbor Master. Karen stiffened. I've seen that code before. Where? I asked urgently. Her voice dropped. In the corruption case that vanished from the sheriff database. Upstairs, a door creaked. Light footsteps. Tyler appeared on the stairs, rubbing his eyes. Dad, what's happening? There are cars outside. I moved quickly, kneeling in front of him. Buddy, everything's okay. Just adults handling some stuff. But he wasn't stupid. He saw Javier's tense expression. He saw Karen's badge. He saw the laptop screen. And he saw something else. His little sister, Maddie, standing behind him, holding something in her small hand. Daddy, she whispered, I found this in the treehouse. She handed me a tiny black object, a listening device. Karen's eyes widened. They bugged your kid's treehouse. My blood pressure spiked so violently I felt dizzy. Javier swore loudly. Karen grabbed her radio. Hold to dispatch. Get me an immediate evidence technician at Walker Ranch and log a priority threat against minors. Static crackled. Copy, Deputy Holt. She turned to me, jaw set. They are monitoring your home, your land, your children. Ethan, the line has been crossed. Her tone shifted. No longer officer calm. This was personal. Before she could continue, a thunderous crash echoed across the property. The sound of splintering wood and something heavy falling. Karen drew her gun instantly. Stay with the kids, she ordered. Javier with me. They sprinted toward the sound coming from behind the barn. I pulled my kids into the hallway. Tyler whispered, voice shaking, Dad, is someone trying to get in? I forced a calm tone I didn't feel. No, Bud, you're safe. Just stay with me. My heart pounded like a drum under my ribs as I guided them to the interior room, the one without windows. Karen's voice echoed outside, sharp and commanding. Sheriff's office. Hands where I can see. Another voice, deep male, frantic, shouted something unintelligible. Then the sound of running. Then Karen yelling, Stop. Then Javier shouting, He's heading toward the creek. I locked the kids in the safe room and sprinted outside. Karen and Javier tore through the brush, chasing a man in dark clothing, broad-shouldered, fast, terrified, with a crowbar in his hand. He leapt the fence by the creek, slipped on the embankment, and slid into the freezing water. Karen caught him at the edge, tackling him like a trained linebacker. He fought, kicked, screamed, but she pinned him with expert precision. Javier grabbed the crowbar. Look, he shouted. The metal bar had fresh wood chips stuck to it. I ran to the barn. My barn door was smashed open, hinges twisted and inside. My generator had been tampered with. Wires cut, fuel spilled, a rag stuffed near the ignition. Karen dragged the man into view. He spat at the ground. You can't stop it, he hissed. The harbor master wants this land. The words echoed through my skull. Karen's eyes darkened. You're under arrest, she growled, and you're going to tell me everything. At the kitchen table, handcuffed in dripping creek water, the man, mid-40s, rough, shaking, finally spoke after 20 minutes of Karen's quiet, relentless questioning. He wasn't smart enough to hide things, not trained enough to resist pressure. His name was Brent Carlson, the same man identified in last episode, and he was ready to crack. They told me to scare him off, Brent muttered. Said he'd break easy. Who? Karen asked firmly. He swallowed. Cordelia. But she wasn't alone. Who else? Brent hesitated. A long, tense silence. Finally, Craig Dalton, he whispered. The councilman. Karen leaned closer. And the harbor master? Who is it? Brent's lips trembled. You don't understand, he rasped. He's not just a man. He's the one who controls permits, land seizures, development approvals, everything. People who cross him lose their jobs or disappear. Name, Karen repeated. Brent pressed his eyes shut. His name is... Before he finished, a bullet shattered the window. Glass exploded. Karen lunged, tackling me to the floor. Brent screamed. Another bullet tore through the kitchen cabinet. Someone was firing from a forest. Sniper distance. Down, Karen shouted. She grabbed her radio. Hold to dispatch. Officer under fire at Walker Ranch. Shots fired. Need immediate backup. Javier pulled Brent to ground, shielding him. Tyler and Maddie screamed from the safe room. My heart nearly stopped. Karen crawled to the window edge and scanned the tree-lean, jaw clenched. They're trying to silence him, she growled. They know he talked. I whispered, Karen, the kids. I know, she said, eyes burning. We hold this line until backup arrives. Bullets kept coming. Closer. Deliberate. Targeted. The message was unmistakable. Stop digging, or we'll bury you. Karen looked at me, inches from my face. Ethan, she whispered fiercely. This is a war now. The sheriff backup didn't arrive for 9 minutes. 9 minutes of bullets, breaking glass, screaming wind, and the terrifying realization that whoever wanted us silence wasn't afraid of shooting at a sheriff's deputy. 9 minutes that stretched like 9 hours. When the distant sirens finally echoed through the valley, the gunfire stopped as suddenly as it had started. Whoever had been hiding in the tree-lean fled before the cruisers reached the property. But the damage was done. The kitchen looked like a war zone. Shattered window, splintered cabinets, with chips scattered everywhere. Brent trembling, handcuffed, face white as bone. Karen standing guard with her service weapon, breathing slow and controlled. Tyler and Maddie clung to me the moment I opened the safe room door. They were both shaking. Maddie burying her face in my chest. Tyler trying so hard to be brave but failing. Tears escaping his eyes. Karen approached us, holstering her weapon. They're safe, she whispered. You protected them, Ethan. But I saw the guilt behind her eyes. And the fury. Sheriff Douglas Kane entered with a small squad behind him. Older man, barrel-chested. Mustache like he stepped straight out of 1970s police drama. He looked at the shattered window, the bullet holes, the terrified kids, then at Karen. Holt, he said quietly, start talking. Karen took a breath and delivered everything like a rapid-fire report. The poisoning attempt, the hidden camera, the break-in, Brent's confession, the sniper shots. Sheriff Kane listened without interrupting, his face gradually turning from serious to grim to a deep, deadly anger. When she finished, he walked to the window, scanned the tree-lean, and said in a voice that sent chills through the room, someone just declared open season on law enforcement. He faces deputies. Secure the perimeter. Full sweep. I want every footprint, every shell casing, every shred of evidence. Then he turned to me. Mr. Walker, as of now, this ranch is an active crime scene, and you're under sheriff's protection. I swallowed hard. Tyler tugged my sleeve. Dad, are we gonna be okay? I knelt down. Yeah, buddy, we're gonna fight this. Karen stepped forward and placed a steady hand on his shoulder. No one is touching your family, she said gently. Okay? Her presence calmed both kids, but when she turned back to Sheriff Kane, her voice was stone. We need protective custody for the Walker kids. Immediately. The sheriff nodded. Agreed. They'll stay with deputies until we secure this place. My chest tightened. I didn't want my kids leaving me, but I knew she was right. They weren't safe here. Not yet. Brent Carlson, soaking wet from the creek, trembling uncontrollably, lifted his head. They're gonna kill me, he whispered. They're gonna kill all of you. You don't understand what Harbor Master can do. Karen stepped closer. Brent, listen to me. You cooperate, you get protection. But you have to talk. He shook his head violently. No, you don't get it. He has city council. He has developers. He has cops. He has... He stopped abruptly, eyes darting toward the deputies near the door. Karen noticed instantly. Brent, do you know which officers he controls? He clamped his mouth shut, his eyes filled with terror. Sheriff Kane stepped forward and knelt in front of him. Son, Kane said, voice deep and steady. You're under my jurisdiction now. You talk, and I'll make sure no one touches you. But if you keep quiet, I can't protect you from whoever fired those shots. Brent's jaw trembled. He finally whispered. It started with land surveys, then code violations, then buying out a few desperate families. Cordelia ran the harassment. Dalton handled the paperwork. Linden Group funded the operation. And Harbor Master? Karen pressed. Brent squeezed his eyes shut. He's the architect. He decides which land to seize, which families to break. A sudden sound outside. A faint crunch of leaves. Light steps. Karen's head snapped toward the back window. Someone's still out there. Sheriff Kane signaled 2 deputies to check it out silently. The tension thickened like smoke. Brent leaned forward, whispering so softly only Karen and I could hear. The harbor master. He's watching everything. He's listening. He knows everything that happens on this ranch. Karen frowned. How? Brent swallowed hard and mouthed a word. Drones. Sheriff Kane's radio crackled. Sheriff, this is Unit 4. Look up. Everyone stepped outside. The sky above the ranch was cold and gray. Then something moved, almost invisible at first, blending into the color of the clouds. A small drone circled high above, silent, unmoving, watching. Sheriff Kane muttered, Son of a... Karen drew her weapon but stopped. It was too high. Javier cursed. They'd been monitoring everything. Karen spoke through clenched teeth. Sheriff, we need aerial support. That drone isn't consumer grade. That's corporate survey level. Possibly military surplus. Kane snarled. They're surveilling my deputies. This is war. He ordered 2 units to pursue the drone's signal direction via GPS triangulation. A deputy approached. Sheriff, protective transport is ready. Tyler grabbed my hand tight. I don't want to leave you, Dad. My heart cracked. I knelt. Buddy, this is just until Karen and I make this place safe. Okay? You'll be back. Maddie hugged my neck. Are the bad people gone? I forced a smile. They will be. Karen knelt beside us. I'll ride with them, she said. I want them safe. I looked at her sharply. What? No, I need you here. She held my gaze. And I need to make sure nothing happens on that drive. Once they're secure, I'll come right back. Her voice had that unstoppable strength again. Trust me, Ethan. And I did. I nodded slowly. The kids were escorted into the sheriff SUV. Karen climbed in with them. The convoy rolled down the access road, engines rumbling like an armored procession. I watched until the last flashing lights disappeared down the hill. The ranch had never felt so quiet, or so exposed. Javier stayed behind with me, arms crossed, scanning the trees. Brother, he said, you realize what's happening, right? What? They're setting up the board, and you're the king piece. Before I could respond, 2 deputies returned from the woods. Sheriff, one said, we found this by the creek. He handed over a plastic bag containing a burner phone and a note taped to the back. Karen wasn't here, but I could hear her voice in my head. Touch nothing with bare hands. Sheriff Kane used gloves and opened the bag. The note said, Ethan, this won't stop. Not until you stop. Walk away, or we'll remove everyone helping you. Signed, Harbor Master, with that same stylized logo Javier had seen in the planning files. Javier leaned closer. Well, at least he's sending his love letters. Sheriff Kane ignored the joke. His voice was low and dangerous. We're dealing with organized criminal infrastructure, political corruption, corporate espionage, attempted murder, threats against minors. He turned toward me. Walker, you aren't just in danger. You're the key to taking these bastards down. I swallowed. What do you need me to do? Kane's eyes hardened. You fight back. With us. With evidence. With pressure. He didn't sugarcoat. This won't end until we expose Harbor Master publicly. That night, after the deputies left and the ranch quieted, I walked into the barn to check the generator damage. But the second I flicked the light switch, my blood froze. All across the barn wall, fresh paint, glowing under the single bulb. We know where they're hiding. We know where they're going. We know who you love. The letters dripped like blood. A sound behind me. A twig snap. Soft. Deliberate. I spun. Someone stepped out of the shadows. Not Cordelia. Not Brent. A man in a black coat. Hood up. Masked. But his presence was different. Colder. Calculated. He stood still as if analyzing me, and then said in a calm, chilling voice, You should have taken the money. My heart slammed against my ribs. Who the hell are you? He tilted his head. I'm the one Cordelia answers to. I stepped back. You're the harbor master? He laughed gently. No, I'm the messenger. He took one slow step toward me. But the harbor master has a message. I reached for my phone, but he raised a hand and whispered, Don't. His calmness was more terrifying than yelling. He pointed at the message on the barn wall. That is your future if you keep fighting. You'll lose your home, your family, your life. My fist clenched. You think I'm scared of you? No, he said. You're scared for them. He smiled behind the mask. I could hear it in his voice. Consider this your final warning. He stepped back into the shadows and vanished like smoke. I stumbled backward, adrenaline shaking my limbs, and then headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. Karen's SUV. The moment she saw my face, she ran toward me. "Ethan, what happened?" I pointed at the barn wall, words still dripping. Karen froze. Her eyes hardened with something fierce and terrifying. "Oh, hell no," she whispered. "Not fear. Rage. Pure, protective rage." She grabbed my shoulders. "Ethan, this stops now." Her voice was steel fire and promise all at once. "We bring them down. All of them. Every corrupt official. Every developer. Every accomplice." She stepped closer, voice trembling with fury. "And I swear on my badge, I am not letting the harbor master destroy you. And for the first time, I believe we might actually win, even if it cost everything." The night after the messenger disappeared into the shadows, sleep became impossible, not just because of fear, but because everything had shifted. This wasn't harassment anymore, not petty sabotage, not HOA bullying. This was organized, calculated warfare. The harbor master had sent a messenger, a masked shadow with the calmness of a man who had done this many times before. Karen didn't sleep either. She paced the length of the living room, arms folded, eyes burning with a mix of fury and focus. Her badge rested on the table next to her gun, illuminated by the dim lamplight like a symbol of the war she declared. "Ethan," she said finally, stopping mid-step, "you're not leaving this ranch alone. Not once. Not for a second." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that an order?" Her jaw tightened. "That's a promise." But I saw something else in her eyes. Guilt. She blamed herself for the sniper shots, for the threat on the kids, for the masked man stepping into my barn. "Karen," I started. "Don't," she said sharply. "If something happened to your kids while under sheriff protection, I'd never forgive myself." I stepped closer. "You protected them. You saved us." She didn't look convinced. Before either of us could speak again, Javier burst through the door, breathless and sweating. He wasn't panicked. He was angry. "Brother," he panted, "I found something." Karen snapped alert. "What happened?" Javier pulled a small leather notebook from his jacket. Burnt edges. Torn cover. "I found this near the creek, where the messenger disappeared. Probably fell from his coat when he jumped the fence." Karen grabbed it instantly, opening it like she was defusing a bomb. Inside were coded addresses, payment schedules, initials, timestamps, and a name circled in red ink. A name that made Karen swear under her breath. Dalton. Councilman Craig Dalton. The man responsible for zoning, land seizures, development permits. Karen slammed the notebook shut. "Sheriff Kane needs to see this right now." 20 minutes later, Sheriff Kane arrived with 3 detective-grade officers. They turned my dining table into a command center. Aerial map of the valley. Folders from past development cases. Digital forensics kit. Brent's statements. Prints from the barn threats. The newly found notebook. Karen led the briefing. Strong, sharp, voice steady. She wasn't just a deputy tonight. She was a force. "Sheriff, this notebook proves Harbor Master has multiple operatives. Payment logs look like laundering. Addresses belong to construction supervisors. And the initials correspond to planning officials." Kane scratched his chin. "And the circled name? Craig Dalton. He's the link between Cordelia's harassment and Linden Development's land maps." Javier leaned forward, tapping a timestamp. "Look at this. Every harassment event on the ranch lines up with date in this book." He spread out photos. The poisoned water tank. The trespassers in the barn. The hidden camera. The slash fence. The sniper attack. All on the ledger. Javier said, "Someone paid these people on those exact days." My stomach twisted. "So every time my kids were scared, every time something happened, someone got paid for it?" Karen nodded slowly. "Yes." Sheriff Kane exhaled angrily. "This is racketeering-level corruption. Federal, maybe even interstate." He pointed at me. "Walker, you're the key witness in a criminal conspiracy case." Karen placed a hand on the table. "We're not waiting anymore. We hit first." Sheriff Kane raised an eyebrow. "Holt, what are you proposing?" Karen's eyes gleamed with determination. "A trap." Karen outlined her plan with surgical precision. "The messenger warned Ethan. That means Harbor Master expects him to break. We use that expectation." She wrote on the whiteboard. "Operation Shatterpoint. Phase 1. False retreat. Ethan acts like he's leaving the ranch with his kids permanently. Rumor spreads. Cordelia and Dalton relax. Phase 2, isolation. We reduce deputy presence to make the ranch look vulnerable. Phase 3, surveillance net. Sheriff's office plants microcams in the barn, the tree-line, and the creek. Phase 4, stakeout. Karen, Sheriff Kane, Javier, and 2 detectives take hidden positions around the ranch at night. Phase 5, infiltration. When harbor masters operatives strike, we catch them, red-handed, on camera. No escape. Sheriff Kane scratched his beard. Risky as hell. Karen stared him dead in the eyes. Sir, we need a confession or a digital trail linking Dalton and harbor master. The only way is to draw them out. The sheriff nodded slowly. Fine, but I'm leading this operation. Karen didn't argue, but her jaw shifted slightly. She wasn't used to playing second command. To sell the illusion, I had to act like I was leaving. Javier borrowed a trailer. We loaded boxes into it. Empty ones, but they looked real enough. Deputies drove Tyler and Maddie to a secured safe house hours earlier. But tonight was the fake departure. Karen stood beside me as I strapped down the last box. You okay? She asked quietly. As okay as a man can be while pretending to abandon his life, I replied. She touched my arm gently, her voice softer. This isn't abandonment. This is the only way to end it. I glanced at her. Do you trust this plan? She met my eyes. With my life, she whispered. There was a tension between us. Not romantic. Not yet, but something stronger than partnership. Shared danger formed strange bonds. Before I could speak, her radio crackled. Units in position. Operation Shatterpoint ready. Karen pulled back, her expression shifting into deputy mode. Time to take our positions. I drove the trailer slowly down the road, just until out of direct sight, then turned into an abandoned trail where the detectives were waiting. The ranch behind us grew dark, silent, like an abandoned battlefield waiting for ghosts. Karen took her position behind the barn, Sheriff Kane at the tree-line, Javier near the creek, 2 detectives in the attic with thermal scopes. The night was still, too still, the kind of stillness that screams danger. Fog began rolling in from the river, a low, creeping sheet of white. Karen whispered into radio. Everyone hold. Any movement? Negative. Negative. Javier added. Quiet. Too quiet. A barn owl hooted. Then silence again. Minutes crawled. Everyone breathing slow. Careful. Then, a faint click. Metal against metal. Karen froze. Sheriff, did you hear that? I heard it. Another sound, closer now. A crunch of gravel. Soft steps. More than one person. Karen raised her weapon. Positions, get ready. Footsteps grew louder. 2 shadows moved past the tool shed. Then a third. Javier whispered. 3 targets approaching the barn. Sheriff Kane whispered sharply. Everyone hold fire until visual confirmation. The fog thickened. Shapes moved in the mist. But then, a 4th figure appeared. Taller, more controlled, walking like a commander inspecting his territory. Karen's breath hitched quietly. Oh my God! The man stepped into the faint moonlight, a black coat, hands clasped behind his back, face uncovered. Karen whispered the name in a tone filled with horror and fury combined. Dalton, Councilman Craig Dalton, had arrived. Himself. Not a pawn, not a messenger. The man pulling half the strings. And he wasn't hiding. Karen's voice trembled with controlled rage. Sheriff, we have enough to arrest him. Let's move. But Sheriff Kane whispered harshly. Not yet. We need to know who he answers to. Let him talk. Dalton entered the barn. 2 operatives followed him. Karen listened carefully. Her heart hammered. Her finger hovered near the trigger. The detective in the attic whispered. Mics are picking up audio. Recording now. Inside the barn, Dalton's voice echoed. Cold, smooth, detached. Search everything. Make sure he actually left. The harbor master wants confirmation. Karen stiffened. Dalton continued. And once you're sure, burn the place. Karen's eyes went wide. Sheriff Kane whispered. Oh, hell no. Dalton went on. This land becomes phase 1 next quarter. No more delays. No more Walker. No more interference. The detectives stared at each other. Javier muttered, Got you, you bastard. Then, a 5th voice entered the barn. Footsteps slow. Confident. Heavy. The messenger. Same black coat. Same posture. But this time he lifted his hood and removed his mask. Karen froze. Javier froze. Even the air froze. Because the face underneath was someone none of us expected. Not a criminal. Not a thug. Not a hitman. A public official. Someone who shook hands in front of cameras. Someone families trusted. Someone who smiled in election posters. Karen whispered the name, voice breaking. No, not him. Sheriff Kane went rigid. Holy God. The messenger was Chief Building Inspector Harold Pierce, the man responsible for signing off every development permit in 3 counties. The man directly under state planning authority. Dalton spoke to him. Harbor Master said Walker should have broken months ago. Pierce, now unmasked, answered calmly. He's stubborn, but tonight ends it. Karen whispered fiercely. Sheriff, we move now. Kane finally gave the order. All units take them. Karen burst from her position like a fired bullet. Sheriff's office, hands in the air. Everything exploded at once. Javier rushed from the creek. Detectives stormed from the attic. Sheriff Kane charged the barn door. Dalton grabbed a metal pipe. Pierce reached for a concealed handgun. Karen fired a warning shot, so close the bullet splintered the wood by his hand. Drop it, Pierce. For a moment, he hesitated. Then he lunged. Karen tackled him, slamming him against the stall gate. Dalton tried to flee. Javier intercepted him, swinging a shovel like a warrior. The 2 operatives were taken down by the detectives. Sheriff Kane slammed Dalton onto the dirt floor and cuffed him. You're done, Craig. Dalton spat. You have no idea what you're interfering with. Pierce snarled as Karen cuffed him, her knee in his spine. You think Harbor Master will let this go, Holt? You think he'll stop? Karen leaned close to his ear. I'm counting on the opposite. For the first time, fear flickered in Pierce's eyes. And then, he whispered something Karen didn't expect. Harbor Master is closer than you think. Karen frowned. What does that mean? Pierce smirked. You think Dalton runs things? You think I run things? We're just pieces. Then who? He laughed. You'll find out. Sheriff Kane dragged him up. You'll be answering that in interrogation. Dalton and the operatives were loaded into cruisers, but Pierce's warning echoed through the fog. Back in the living room, Karen paced again, shaking this time. Pierce's reaction, it wasn't bluster. He was telling the truth. He's afraid of Harbor Master. Sheriff Kane nodded grimly, which means Harbor Master is bigger than we thought. Javier sat heavily on a chair. Then who is he? No one answered, because no one knew. Karen finally sat beside me, exhaustion and adrenaline mixing in her eyes. You okay? She asked quietly. I should be asking you that. She half smiled, half sighed. This fight isn't over. I nodded. No, I said softly. But tonight we won. Karen's eyes softened in a way I'd never seen. Yeah, she whispered. We did. But outside, beyond the fog, beyond the ranch, in the dark valley, a single drone light blinked once, watching, listening, reporting. Harbor Master wasn't done, not even close. Dalton, Pierce, the operatives, all locked up, but not one of them had cracked. Not one had revealed the Harbor Master's identity. No matter how long Sheriff Kane interrogated them, no matter how much pressure Karen applied, no matter how damning the evidence, they were terrified of the man pulling the strings. And that fear said more than any confession ever could. After 2 days of silence, the sheriff finally cleared the ranch enough for my kids to return for one supervised visit. Kara herself went to pick them up. The moment Tyler saw me, he ran full speed, nearly knocking me over. Dad, he cried, hugging tight. Maddie wrapped her little arms around my neck. I missed home. I kissed her forehead. I missed you more. Karen watched from a few steps away, arms crossed, but her expression soft. Even the badge on her chest seemed gentler today. But the moment I met her eyes, I saw something else. Something she'd been carrying silently. Fear. Not for herself. For us. She stepped close and lowered her voice. We need to talk. Privately. Tyler and Maddie went inside with Deputy. Karen's expression hardened as soon as they were out of earshot. Sheriff Kane found something last night, she whispered. Something big. What? She exhaled, steadying herself. We tracked a drone. My breath caught, and her eyes lifted to mine. It led us to Millfield City Operations Tower. I frowned. That's the central building for everything, she cut in. Water systems, land development, construction bids, environmental logs, emergency services, permits. A cold realization spread through me. Someone inside that building is the harbor master. Karen nodded grimly. And the only way to expose him is to go in. That night, the sheriff's office held an emergency meeting undercover in Javier's garage. Maps lined the wall, taped in rows. Zoning layouts, financial links, call logs, corruption diagrams, digital pings from the drone signal. Sheriff Kane tapped a red circle on the map. Floor 14 of Operations Tower. Restricted level. Only one person has clearance. Karen whispered. The director. Javier blinked. Director of Operations, that's... Karen finished for him, her voice a whisper of disbelief. Martin Hale. I felt my blood run cold. Martin Hale. Former friend of my father. A man who sent us a sympathy card after Dad passed. A man who shook my hand the day I inherited the ranch. A man who smiled too easily. Sheriff Kane nodded. And every corrupted permit, land seizure, property reevaluation, all signed by him. Javier stared. And the code name, Harbor Master? Karen opened her tablet, showing a digital signature tag. When zoomed in, the stylized HM logo wasn't HM at all. It was a monogram. Hale. It hit us like a punch to the chest. Karen whispered. Harbor Master was Martin Hale all along. Karen and Sheriff Kane laid out the final plan. Operation Deep Current. Objective. Expose Martin Hale and obtain a full confession on record. Steps. 1. Ethan enters the operations tower under the guise of final land surrender. Hale will believe he has won. 2. Hidden audio transmitters, wired by Javier, will capture the conversation. 3. Karen and Sheriff Kane infiltrate the restricted floor. 4. Deputies secure the exits. 5. Once Hale confesses, Kane moves in. Simple, clean, extremely dangerous. Karen approached me afterward. You don't have to do this, she whispered. Yes, I do. She swallowed. If anything happens... It won't, I said, placing my hand gently over hers. I trust you. Her eyes softened. You shouldn't, she whispered, but thank you. The next morning, I entered the operations tower alone. The lobby was polished marble, cold, corporate, a far cry from the warmth of the ranch. The elevator climbed silently to the 14th floor. When the doors opened, Martin Hale stood there waiting. Tall, smooth suit, charming smile, eyes cold as winter. Ethan, he greeted, I was wondering when you'd finally give up. I stepped out, hiding the transmitter Javier had attached under my collar. I want this to end. A slow smile spread across Hale's face. Good. Then let's talk. He guided me into an office overlooking the entire valley. From here, the ranch was a tiny patch of green. A property. A commodity. A target. Ethan, Hale began, your father left that ranch to you, but he never understood its potential. You don't either. Potential? I spat. You mean profit? His smile thinned. Profit keeps cities growing. He walked to the window, hands behind his back. You held up phase 1 by refusing to sign. You cost us millions. You forced my hand. By poisoning me? By threatening my kids? He turned unfazed. I don't get my hands dirty. People act under my direction. They're compensated accordingly. Every word captured by the transmitter. I stepped closer. And the threats? The attacks? The sniper? Hale chuckled. You think I control everything personally? I barely meet the operatives. I give directives. People follow. His expression sharpened. But you, Ethan, you become a problem. He reached into his drawer. I tensed, but he pulled out a folder, not a weapon. Sign this, he said softly. Transfer the land. Walk away. Start over somewhere new. And if I don't... He leaned in close. Then what happened to your father happens to you. The world stopped. I whispered, my father died of a heart attack. Hale's smirk widened. Is that what they told you? My blood turned to ice. Karen's voice crackled faintly in my earpiece. We got it. We got everything. Don't react. Hale continued. James Walker was stubborn like you. Wouldn't sell. So we encouraged him. Stress can do wonders to a weak heart. My vision blurred with rage. You killed him. He shrugged. His death opened the door for us, and it will open the door for yours. He reached under his desk. Karen's whisper, "Move now. Move now. He's drawing." I flipped the desk as Hale pulled a concealed pistol. The gun fired. A bullet slammed into the overturned desk. The door burst open. Karen and Sheriff Kane charged in. "Drop it, Hale!" Karen shouted. Hale spun toward her. Karen fired first. A perfect shot, straight into Hale's shoulder. He screamed, collapsing. Karen kicked the gun away and cuffed him with a fury I had never seen. "You killed his father," she hissed. "You terrorized his family. You poisoned his land. And you think you're getting away?" Hale snarled. "You're ruining everything." Sheriff Kane leaned close. "No, we're fixing it." Within hours, Hale was booked, his office seized, his data servers confiscated, dozens of corrupt permits exposed, Linden Development raided, Dalton and Pierce linked by Hale's confession, the HOA association dissolved, bank accounts frozen, media outlets swarming. A 20-year corruption empire collapsed overnight, all built on land theft, all exposed because of a single rancher who refused to give up and a deputy who refused to let him fall. Days later, back at the ranch, Karen sat on the porch with me, watching Tyler and Maddie chase butterflies near the creek. "Sheriff Kane promoted me," she said quietly. I smiled. "You deserve it." She shrugged, then looked at me, really looked. Ethan, when I first stepped onto this ranch, I saw someone being hunted, a man about to break. And now, I asked, she smiled softly. "Now I see the strongest man I've ever met." I felt my breath catch. "And what do you see when you look at us?" I asked gently. She hesitated, then spoke with honesty that struck deep. Two people who survived held together. "And now," she exhaled, "now we get to live." The wind brushed her hair as she leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. For the first time in months, the ranch felt safe, the valley felt alive, and the ghosts of the past finally felt quiet. Karen whispered one last thing. "Ethan, welcome home."